Good to hear some chatter, obviously some people with some vision, which is great to hear. Can I draw you back together? I think sometimes it's really important actually to take time out to find places of peace and meditation, either together or on your own, just to kind of reflect on what God is doing and where you're at in the journey. But you know, I've heard a number of people talking about being, you know, the year 2020, having 2020 vision for what God is doing in and through us as we move into this new year. But I've got to be honest, I would believe myself to be a bit of a visionary, a bit of a strategist. I'd never claimed to have perfect vision for the future. In reality, I find life has so many unknowns, both on a micro level and a macro level. You know, even as the children of God, as Christians, we face things that we didn't expect. You know, recently I heard of a friend of mine, or a couple that went out onto the mission field with BMS, and within a year had to come back because of ill health. That wasn't in the plan. That wasn't what they were expecting. That wasn't the vision. But unexpected things happen. We get ill. We face redundancy. We face sudden changes. On a macro level, on a global scale, we, you know, looking at the past, we see events like Franz Ferdinand being assassinated, and that's sparking a world war, or the decision of Al Qaeda to fly planes into the Twin Towers just changed. In a moment, they changed the kind of global picture. And as we kind of already heard this morning, that the world just feels like a chaotic place at the moment, doesn't it? So I'm wary of 5-year plans. I'm wary of restricting God to our ideas and actions on how we're going to get there. Often the journey with God is as important as the destination. And if we look at the various stories of Israel, God can take decades or even a couple of generations to fulfill a prophetic vision that he's given. God's timing is not our timing. God has all eternity. That said, without some vision, without some direction, we kind of just are flailing in the wind. As it says in Proverbs 29:18, where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint. But blessed is he who keeps the law. President Obama, you may remember him, came into office almost 10 years ago to this day, in the midst of a recession in America, with a simple vision: we're going to get through this. So vision just can be that. It kind of reminds me, though, of the story of 3 builders. And the first builder, he's laying bricks, and somebody comes along and says to him, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm laying bricks. And then they go to the next builder and say, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a wall. And then he goes to the third builder and asks the same question. And he says, I'm building a great and ornate cathedral which will speak of the awesome wonder of God. Who do you think out of those 3 builders was committed to the task? Who do you think found meaning and purpose in their work? Which builder put their heart and soul into doing the best job possible? Or to give you another example, one of the things we do over Christmas is we like to do some jigsaws. We don't get time much at other points in the year, but we as a family do jigsaws. Have you ever tried doing a big and complex jigsaw without the picture? It's kind of near impossible, isn't it? So I want to offer you this morning in the reading a picture, a view, if you like, of the completed jigsaw. A God-given prophetic vision to Isaiah of how the world is when God's kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven, which I believe is the vision that God gives to us. So I'm just going to read from Isaiah 65, verses 17 to 25. For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind, but be glad and rejoice in what I am creating, for what I am about to create Jerusalem as joy, and its people as a delight. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and delight in my people. No more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it, or the cry of distress. No more shall there be in it an infant that lives but a few days, or an old person who dies, or an old person who does not live out a lifetime. For one who dies at 100 years will be considered a youth, and one who falls short of 100 will be considered accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be, and my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labour in vain or bear children for calamity, for they shall be offspring blessed by the Lord, and their descendants as well. Before they call, I will answer. While they are speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox, but the serpent, its food shall be dust. They shall not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, says the Lord. The Bible, throughout the Old and New Testament, points towards the hope and restoration of all nations, of all people. In a world of chaos, of division, of violence, injustice, sickness, inequality, environmental abuse, a vision of God's kingdom shalom should bring the people of God together with one single vision. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. And in some cases, those that call themselves Christians seem to hold values that seem entirely divorced from shalom. Shalom is the Old Testament equivalent of the kingdom of God. Shalom is the dream of God, the goal of creation, the hope of universal restoration. Peace is at the heart of the gospel, because the vision or mission of God is to bring shalom to the whole of creation. Shalom in many languages and cultures is offered as a greeting, a blessing of peace. However, shalom means so much more than peace. In Scripture, it's the restoration of relationship between God and humanity. It's the reconciling of enemies. The weapons of war being turned into agricultural implements. It's the removal of injustice and oppression. It's the flourishing of communities, created, liberated from bondage, and the end of sickness and death. I could say so much more about what shalom is, but you get the idea. An ancient rabbinic legend tells how God created every single blessing that was ever going to be created. They lay in a huge pile, and God needed a container, a box, a bag, a jar in which to put them, but could find nothing. So God created shalom. Just over 18 months ago, we moved to Loo in Cornwall. God's call to this new place. We did not believe it was right to go with a set plan, nailed down vision as to why we were there. Our vision, if you like, was to be attentive, or what's been referred to as participating in missional listening. And that might all sound very passive and lacking in vision, but far from it. In many ways, it's really challenged us, because we often find ourselves, our identity, our meaning, in what we do rather than who we are. And when what you do is open and fluid, it's kind of hard to find purpose and identity in it. I was describing what we were doing to some new friends in Lou the other day, and she said, I can't cope with blank pages, I need to know what I'm doing. But I think it's easy going into a community to come with all the answers before we've even listened to the questions. We've felt in coming to a new community, we need to recognise the story doesn't start with us. We join a community with a long history and hopefully a future long after our involvement there. And guess what? God has been and is and will be at work long before we showed up and long after we leave. So our vision has been for at least the first years, but in many ways just is ongoing. It's the process of listening, of being attentive, to learn, to understand the local community through hearing the stories, understanding the challenges and getting to know the community. But also taking that time out to listen to what God is doing through prayer and meditation, through conversation with other Christians and people of peace in that community. God didn't show up in that community when we arrived. God's been working there for many generations. I find it interesting that Jesus usually took the position of guest in a community, whilst church seems to often prefer a position of power, playing the host. So in Lou, we've come as guests of that community. We've found ourselves being invited by the community to participate in the life and well-being of that place. Having listened for the last 18 months, we're now being asked our story, not out of politeness, but a genuine interest in who we are and what we believe. I find it interesting, in contrast, another lady has moved into that community recently. She comes with a different set of beliefs and philosophy to our own, but she has this evangelical zeal, if you like, to rescue people and make their lives better. And within 2 weeks of her moving into that community, she'd taken on the leadership of one of the groups that my wife and I are part of. To put it bluntly, with a rather crass approach, she's come with good intentions. She's come because she wants to help people, but actually what she's done is angered and alienate people. So as a church this year, those of you that are members or part of this church community, you'll be trying to discern as you seek to call a new minister. Can I come with a couple of humble suggestions as you do this? Firstly, one of the things that I've often been asked when I've applied for roles like that myself is what vision do you bring? What's your vision for Oakhampton? Can I suggest that's the wrong question? Because when I've been asked that, my answer is, actually I haven't listened yet. Or I explain that my vision is to listen, to be attentive before anything else. Secondly, from the other side, I'd be wary of a prospective minister who wants to come and place and impose their agenda upon you. It might sound exciting, but understanding the role of a minister is to listen and to bring out the vision of this community. To be honest, I think the failure is not with prospective or ministers. I think it's a failure of our training. And I've often seen churches and their ministers fall out because the minister believes, or at least behaves in a way that the story starts with them. It's not really their fault. We often feel that we're judged on performance and results. And in order to do that, we look at the wrong measures in judging success. It means too often a minister behaves more like a CEO, trying to get results, than a servant of the community, which of course is the root word of minister. It's not about weak leadership. It's not about not being the kind of man or woman out front. It's about having the strength and integrity of character, to know that vision is a shared vision, and hopefully it's a God-given prophetic vision as we discern together the heart of God for our community. So our individual and collective vision should be one that is part of God's restoration and redeeming mission. It should be about the shalom of the places that we live and work. How that looks in your place should not be imposed by others outside or coming in, but from a deep listening and attentiveness to your community, to Oakhampton. And there are a number of ways of doing that, as I've already talked about, but it should be rooted in prayer, meditation, and theological reflection. But it's good to get out, to start to hear the voices of the wider community. We can look online at statistics and other information about Oakhampton, and that's helpful, but there's no substitute for getting out and listening to stakeholders in your community. Too often we go out and say and speak and we don't listen. Those with positional authority, police, counsellors, head teachers, but also those people of influence who are the gatekeepers in your community, might not hold official roles, but again they're people of peace who will help you, work with you, even though they might not yet be Christian. Again, I'd say more, but my purpose here today is not to teach you strategy, but suffice to say the application of what I'm saying, of discerning the vision, is about listening and about engaging in dialogue with people. Paul, when he visited Athens, as recorded in Acts 17, I was going to read it to you, but we're kind of short of time, so I encourage you to turn to it again in your own time, but look up Paul in Athens, because he goes and he knows the importance of learning about the culture and the community he found himself in. He starts by just observing what's around in the town and what's around in the places of worship, the idols that people have. He knows what the poets and the prophets have said in that community. He dialogues with people to learn what the questions are, to learn where people are at before offering the hope that he's found in the gospel. So our call, our vision, our hope is for shalom, God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We need to hear God's voice and listen and learn from our communities to know what that looks like in this place to which God has called us, and what part God is calling us as individuals and a local community to play. Then we will have a vision of God's kingdom in Oakhampton as it is in heaven. In closing, I want to read you a piece written by a minister in Glasgow and see if it resonates. More homework. As well as reading Acts 17, I suggest that you might want to go and write something like this for Oakhampton. The New Glasgow. I saw a vision. It was last Thursday at 11 o'clock in the morning. I was standing on the necropolis, looking down over the city, and the cold blue winter sky broke open above my head, and the Spirit of God breathed on my eyes, and my eyes were opened. I saw Glasgow, the holy city, coming down out of heaven, shining like a rare jewel, sparkling like clear water in the eye of the sun, and all the sickness was gone from the city. There were no more suburbs and schemes, no difference between Bearsden and Drum Chapel. I saw the Clyde running with the water of life, as bright as crystal, as clear as glass, the children of Glasgow swimming in it. And the Spirit showed me the tree of life growing on Glasgow Green. I looked out and there were no more homeless people, no more women working the streets, no more needles up the closes. HIV and AIDS were things of the past. There were no more racist attacks, no more gay bashing, no more rapists, no more stabbings, no more Protestants and Catholics, no more IRA graffiti, no more orange marches, because there was no more hate. And I saw women walking safe at night, saw the men were full of passion and gentleness, that none of the children were ever abused, because the people's sex was full of justice and of joy. I saw an old woman throw back her head and laugh like a young girl. And when the sky closed back, her laughter rang in my head for days and days and would not go away. This is what I saw looking over the Gallow Gate, looking up from the city of death and I knew that there would be a day of resurrection, and I believe that there will be a day of resurrection.